Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Galaxy Brain. I am Doa. With me this time is Dilly. That's right, it's our second World of Warcraft Shadowlands PvP Galaxy Brain where we try to get deep inside the minds of some of the best players out there. Dilly is one of the best hunter players out there. You've been that way for a long time. You've also casted a couple not Overwatch. Why am I thinking Overwatch? A couple World of Warcraft tournaments from time to time as well. Welcome to the show. For those who are less familiar with you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I go by Dilly. Like you said, I've done some casting for a while. I've played competitively for a really long time, played in lots of tournaments. I've pretty much been streaming, playing Hunter for many, many years up until recently. So I've been enjoying playing at the highest level for a long time. Got lots of experience and knowledge under my belt.
So when did you start playing PvP competitively? Like what expansion was it where you really started to kind of dive into it and do it more than just kind of for fun like we all did?
Um, I think there was like a point in Cataclysm. I guess when I was in high school, like my first year or two, like I started getting really into it. I was getting competitive. Um, I think somewhere along the way, I took like a small break where I played League of Legends with my friends because that game got super popular.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's what my friends and I did in high school. But eventually, I took a break, came back to WoW because I really did like what I was kind of getting out of it when I was playing in Cataclysm. I was semi high rated, not super top of the ladder. But then I came back near the end of Mists of Pandaria, and I guess from some of the things I learned from League of Legends, like how to be like a good teammate, I guess helped me out a lot. And
Yeah, I could see
from
that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess the experience from that really translated well. I felt like I was better as a teammate, and then I started to get insane success. I was top of the ladder. I was performing well in tournaments. Um, yeah, I got like a really good reputation for myself from that point on, and I just kept competing, adapting to new expansions every single time. Just loved playing Hunter, liked playing the game. It was really fun.
Cool. And like right now you're over 3K on your hunter, aren't you right now? That's like insanely
Yeah,
high. Yeah.
yeah. I think I'm like probably the second highest rated hunter or something like that in the world. I'm not completely sure. I know I was at one point, but then like I've kind of taken a break since midterms, so
Mm.
usually people will pass you or whatever, but staying kind of top of the ladder
Hey,
pretty
like
consistently.
ultimately you got to make sure the if you're going to school, you got to make sure like that's worth it. That does come first a little
Yeah.
bit at this point in your life. Yeah. I can agree with that. No shame there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a point where that was like my number one priority, but yeah, in the fall I'm starting a PhD program, so I'm like, well, I need to make sure I finish my last semester with good grades. So
What is it
don't
a
worry.
PhD in if you don't mind me asking?
It's in pure mathematics.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. So as an art major, to me, you sound like the smartest person on planet Earth, then basically. So I'll just put that
uh,
out there. But so why Hunter? There's a lot of classes in World of Warcraft. What was it about Hunter that drove you to it, other than the fact that you could just roll on any weapon at any time and justify it somehow? Not
uh,
that I have any sort of like deep-seated anger that's against hunters that's been like buried down for a while. Like we don't need to talk about that. It's there, but why Hunter?
uh, I think I started playing WoW when I was like probably like 10 or 11,
Okay.
and I finished watching Lord of the Rings. Big fan of Legolas, so I
Yeah.
wanted to shoot my bow at people. That's pretty much it.
All
I just
right.
like shooting my bow, and then I just kind of stuck with it. I kind of liked that it seemed a little unique, and I liked having a pet that you could tame because also
Hmm.
yeah, when I was a kid, loved Pokemon, so it's like best of both worlds. I get to shoot people with a bow, and I have my little pet. I enjoyed that part of it the most, I think, of any
So
class.
Hunter is basically Legolas with Pokemon for you. Okay, I
Yeah,
got it.
yeah, exactly.
That's cool. That makes sense. I could definitely see that. All right. So getting into Hunter in the highest level of PvP sense, this is the last question I'll ask you before we actually jump into some games. But what do you feel that Hunter really brings to PvP? What do you feel like the main strength of the class has been over the years?
I think over the years, it kind of has this like nice, unique niche where it's like it's got like kind of the jack of all trades type feel.
Hmm.
Like um, you have so much varying types of utility, and they might not. I guess the way to describe it is like you might not have an ability that's intended to work like a specific or straightforward way, like something that hunters used to have.
Mhm.
was the snake trap ability, which summoned a bunch of snakes, and people look at that and it's like, well, that seems useless. But um, because classes like priests or warlocks used to have like the AoE fears, you could have the snakes eat that because those had like a target cap. So
Okay, yeah.
I think you'd have like little tools that maybe it wasn't like, hey, this stops fear. It was like, oh, well, maybe you could use this ability for this like specific purpose, and then it actually helps you cover that. Although no one would have like thought that it would, work like that intentionally. So I think that's like one strength is you just have all these, um, you know, variety of utilities that can kind of cover strengths that a lot of classes bring to the table.
Mhm.
And I think it also has that instant crowd control role. So mages, for example, like they have polymorph, which is one of the best CCs in the game, and hunters basically have their own version of an instant polymorph. It's not as spammable, but I mean, having that as a reliable CC that you can get most of the time, I think is a big strength that is continued to make hunters usually pretty decent.
You can turn people into blocks of ice rather than into
Yeah,
sheep and things like that. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that's really neat. That's actually a really interesting description of what Hunter brings. That's very cool. All right. So now I'm extra excited about this episode because we're gonna dive deep into a lot of this kind of thing. Now we have two 3v3 matches and two 2v2 matches to watch. We're gonna go through the two 3v3 matches first. So you ready to get into it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right, let's do it.
Excited.
All right, here we are. Game number one. Set the stage for us, Dilly. What are we supposed to be looking for in this one?
All right, so I chose this game because I think one of the most important things to learn in a match like this is patience. So I think something that a lot of hunters usually will do is they'll be really greedy to kind of force a kill opportunity. They'll see their damage buttons be available, they'll see their CC available, and they want to kind of go for that kill opportunity as soon as possible. But when you're fighting spellcaster comps like this, usually as a hunter, you want to kind of be patient and just look for a really clean opportunity as instead of like more of a rushed one. So
Okay.
a lot of this game is me playing really defensive with my team. I wait for my feral to set up some CC for me, and then I'll go for my kind of setup, and then if I realize we don't have a way to get any damage, then I just go back to the pillar and we just try to keep resetting. So,
All right.
I had my cooldowns available. I held on to them. I realized we weren't getting much with our CC. So, kind of just had the idea that it's just better to just be patient and pull back, let them use all their offensive cooldowns. Boom can use Incarn, Celestial Alignment, use the Convoke the Spirits. They went all in, and we just sat back.
Yeah.
Now that they've done this, I actually have a damage opportunity. So if you pause right here, you can kind of see I popped all my bursts on them.
Mhm.
When my feral, he went for a kick on their healer, tried to get their CC. They kind of broke it up, but I just shoved all my damage because I knew that this is a good time for us to be offensive without risking my healer's mana.
Right.
Uh, like a big thing is when you're playing hunter comps, you usually have a priest, and you don't want to waste their mana when you're fighting spellcaster comps because the game could potentially go on for a long time. So anytime that you're taking like free damage just because you try to be too offensive, it could kind of end up being a downfall in the game. So here our focus is just do I get a clean opportunity? Yes, okay, I go in, and then if I see that it's not worth it, I kind of try to just stay back. So here I go in for a little bit. We
Mhm.
can't get the CC because the shaman kind of outplayed my feral. When my feral went in for a stun on him, he used the fleshcraft from the necrolord. It
Right.
means the stun. So once we have that, I just realized there's no way I get extra CC, and we kind of just do a little bit of our damage and then decide we're gonna have to pull back right after.
So it kind of seems like a lot of WoW Arena is sort of like a game of exchanges, right? You were talking about not wanting to tax your healer's mana, so it's like, can you make the exchange where any HP you would lose by engaging would be worth the mana then that would be lost by your priest to keep you healed? And would that exchange in terms of health and mana you're taking away from the enemy players and the enemy healer be worth it? At least equivalent, if not better. So I suppose,
Yeah.
is that exchange kind of something you always keep in mind then?
Yeah, you have to keep that in mind a lot as a hunter. There's, I mean, even for all comps, really,
Yeah.
it kind of just depends on like certain matchups. Like some matchups, you can be the aggressor the entire game, and being really offensive could be beneficial for your healer's mana. For example, sometimes just forcing the other team defensive prevents them from doing a lot of things. This is something that is really good when you fight mage teams as hunter. Generally, you could be on the more offensive end in certain windows because by forcing the mage to run away from you, he's not pushing in and pressuring your healer. Doesn't have to use things. So
Do
kind of
you
depends on what you fight.
do you ever track? Do you ever kind of track healing efficiency on the other side? Like if you're watching the other healer and saying, okay, they're throwing out too much, they're overusing their mana, and that's something I can take advantage of by doing what you're talking about, putting more pressure on?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that just happens. Like, there might be situations where I can maybe freely do damage and it's safe for my healer. Like, I could be in a position like this. I'm still close enough to the healer or to the pillar, for example, but I can kind of freely do damage on whoever I wanted. These classes are really tanky, so I still end up spending a lot of time line of sighting. But as like a general rule of thumb, there might be times where you could do damage and it's safe, but you just maybe can't go in for the CC. In which case, that's the time where you could just start getting damage. You stay safe for your healer's mana, but you're still pressuring them
Right.
because all the damage they're doing, they still have to heal through it.
I mean, the really nice thing for hunters right now is you've got the Kyrian Covenant ability that lets you kind of bypass line of sight, like
Yeah.
what, once a minute or something like that right now.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and even another Covenant option that you have buff from this patch is the Venthyr, and that kind of gives you this really consistent pressure with kill shot procs.
Right.
And that's something that a lot of hunters will do too. And they can kind of play more to that style where instead of just being based around burst, you could just sit back, spam kind of sustained pressure, and you could just start winning games just through attrition. So you kind of have two good options as a hunter now.
That makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, because I know for PvP for a long time it was just like Kyrian or bust basically. Are you ready to unpause?
Yeah, totally ready.
All right, cool. We'll do that.
So we went here. I went for like some small CC with the scatter shot. I get stopped by them, and I realize we have nothing else to go with. We kind of use all our offensives.
Yeah.
And I just decided I had to pull back with my healer. There's no need for me to be out in the open. They're going to win that kind of damage race with an Ellie and a Boomkin. So we want to instead drag them into a bad spot. So we start bringing the shaman behind the pillar with us, and then this makes it easier for my feral to get a stun on the healer. And now I could get that freezing trap on him. So it's all about kind of dragging them into bad spots, playing defensive, and then waiting for our good opportunities. Some things to note is if we go back just a couple of seconds.
Sure. I think I can go back a little bit.
So when we have this trap land on the shaman here,
right,
I noticed something that when you're dealing with boomkins in general, like or another hybrid, they might try to off heal when you get CC. So once we get the CC, I try to use my scatter shot instead on him to kind of stop some of the off healing. Give my healer the opportunity to maybe get a safe fear, because he could be stopped from the boomkin if he tries to go for a cyclone, or he casts a root, or he's just spamming Rugos. So I kind of want to use my scatter shot sometimes as a way to kind of just peel and make sure that the hybrid or third target really can't do anything. So that's how this setup that we get here is really clean.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And this is one of those comps too, like you were talking about, where some comps it's a battle of kind of pressure. This comp is kind of like burst windows with elemental, shaman, boomkin, druid, and if you can survive those windows, then it's your turn basically to put on the pressure, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, as long as we get like that burst on them, that's how we know we'll get a kill opportunity. It's really hard when you're dealing with like two hybrids to kind of just win an attrition battle, because they're just gonna kind of beat you in that kind of sense. So you just want to look for where you can 100 to 0 them. So the big thing to look out for is I have my burst cooldowns available right now, and I just have to wait for my feral to get a clean opportunity where we could CC again. I have my trap back up, I have my scatter shot back up. So right here, the thing I'm thinking of is I want to go for our CC. I'm using my pet to kill Sky Fury Tomes, doing everything I can to make sure they don't have extra damage on us, and try to drag them back out into a position where we get clean CC on their shaman. So here I finally have my damage available, and I try to go for the setup and know that my feral can get ready for CC. Oh, sorry, I overstepped a second. Right after this go, we start looking for that CC opportunity. So once I end up pressing my double tap here with my feral stun, then we go for the go, and I kick the boomkin cyclone, and then I have like a scatter shot available for him. So I have so much CC that I have to use here, and they get bursted down super quickly.
The bonus damage from the Kyrian ability, like everything basically thrown at him there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the key thing is that they all get crowd controlled at the same time, and then my healer can get a mind games, and I can use my Kyrian ability, and that's like a clean way that you get a kill on these types of compositions.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, so just biding your time and finding that moment when you can combine the crowd control that's not going to be broken as easily with that CC. And
Yeah.
so there's a win. Wow, a whole 4 points. Huge.
Yeah, that sometimes does happen. That happens when you get really high and the other teams are
Yeah,
kind of low.
I suppose that is true. All right, let's get back to the lobby and chat a bit more about that.
Okay, cool.
All right, so with that last particular one, it came down to bursting the shaman. Like in against that composition, it does
Mhm.
kind of seem, and I mean, having played shaman a lot of years myself, it does kind of feel like you are the most fragile in a lot of those compositions. Is that kind of just a
Yeah.
general rule of thumb? Wherever you see a shaman, it's just like that's who you go for generally. Maybe less on the resto side, but definitely
Yeah.
on the Ellie enhancement kind of thing. So he was that player was always going to be the target from second one in that particular round, right?
Yeah, I think I mean the boomkin sometimes can be. It
Sure.
sort of depends on their positioning, but general rule of thumb, if you're a comp that plays around a lot of CC, like the Feral Hunter Disc Priest or your Rogue Mage Priest, usually Elemental Shamans are the better kill target because they can be super disruptive.
Uh huh.
Um, otherwise, so you want to have them locked down. Like the boomkin can't really stop that much on the go. Like he can only cast a cyclone.
Yeah.
But if the shaman's free, he could use grounding totems, he could use wind shears, hexes, charm. There's so much other utility that if he positions really well, you might not be able to get the cross crowd control as well.
Okay.
So they generally end up being a better target.
Makes sense. All right. So that was game number one. We have one more 3v3 to look at before we jump into the 2v2s. Ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it. Okay. Here we are in game number two. And this is going to be you up against look like Windwalker Monk and then Fire Mage. And is that a Holy Priest? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a holy priest.
I feel like you don't
So
see a whole lot of Holy Priests.
yeah, I think they were really unpopular, but
Huh.
I honestly think that they're probably one of the best healers.
Why is that?
I play the holy. I think they just have such strong instant healing, and
True.
they also have a range stun, which is super useful.
True.
So
Yeah.
if you want to pause for a second to kind of talk about that.
Sure.
So I think the thing is the discipline priests, they can also run into mana issues, and that's something you don't really have as holy.
Yeah.
So that's super valuable. You can out mana other healers. They have a lot of ways to avoid CC with Greater Fade. Greater Fade, and then they have Shadow or Death, and they can always use their mobility with feathers. So this might not always be able to do that because they have to take the Masochism talent sometimes if they're a kill target, which they use that if they're being trained. So their Shadow Mends are basically more effective. Holy Priest doesn't have that issue. They don't have to worry about healing. They're super good when being trained, and they're really good at avoiding crowd control. So I think that in this meta, they're kind of similar to being like Holy Pallies. They can trade cooldowns and avoid lots of CCs. I think that they're pretty much right up there with Holy Pallies, the synergy with Fire Mages. So I think now people are starting to realize they're really strong. And honestly, I prefer playing with them as my hunter too. I like playing with even this comp. I like playing with Holy, except the priest I was playing with, he doesn't really play Holy that much. So we haven't really experimented with it, but I have a feeling that it still would be really good in this composition too.
All right, interesting. And this is a pretty beefy team on the other side. Like I see Vendruki over there. Like you're hitting some pretty pretty good players up here at this point in the ladder.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely playing versus them. They wanted to practice the Holy Priest. It's really good. Yeah, I picked this because I think that these types of compositions are really popular. It's just mage melee with either a paladin or a priest. Like that's pretty common. You'll see that in AWC. You'll see that
Oh yeah.
on ladder. That's what people play, and I think being able to kind of understand how to play against these is really important if you're playing a hunter.
So real quick before we unpause, then what are your initial thoughts coming into this one? Like, what are the first kind of like electrical impulses that go across your brain as far as like how are you going to handle this as you jump in?
My biggest thing is I know that they have a couple win conditions. So when you have priests on the team, mind games goes, that's one kill window, right? Priest gets off a clean mind games, that has winning game pressure. With mages, combustion is something they want to kill with, and they also want to kill with crowd control. And when Walker monks, they usually burst with their leg sweeps, and they use their images and Zuin. So I kind of keep in mind all of those opportunities that they have to win. And my goal as the hunter is just to kind of just stop those. I don't necessarily have to have the best go against something like this. I have to mostly just kind of stop them from getting that win condition. And as long as I do that and we do damage, we eventually will be able to run them out of cooldowns and pressure their healer and get a win.
Okay, makes sense. Well, I'm gonna press play here, and yeah. So right now, when you look at sort of how this is setting up as far as their positioning goes, looks like at this point it's just sort of like a little bit of line of sight, a little bit of poking, kind of feeling each other out at this point.
Yeah, I kind of want to stay far enough away from my healer that we're not stacked up together for leg sweeps, but we
Yeah.
still can get that classic stun trap. And then while I have the stun trap, if you pause, you'll notice that I had the monk scattershotted here
Mm-hmm.
right when the monk was on top of the priest and the priest is in the freezing trap. So this gives my priest the opportunity to fear both the monk and the priest. So
Right.
now the mage is completely alone. This gives me the window where I know, okay, I can pop my cooldowns here because for someone to peel me, that means that they have to use a trinket. So if I can pop this, force the monk or the priest to use an out, then that's a good trade for us. So you could go through, and that's pretty much exactly what happens. I pop
Right.
my Kyrian arrow, kick the mage on the ring, and then I start doing my burst. And the monk gets dispelled from the priest because he uses his undead racial to break that.
Mm-hmm.
Now they use combustion on my priest. So whenever you see a combustion from a fire mage, you want to use your Roar Sacrifice. It's a crit immunity, prevents the target from being crit, and that shuts down mage combustion. They're forced to start attacking me, and I get to trade out a couple minor defensive cooldowns. But after that, I just start doing burst. I've negated their go, and this is kind of the window where I try to start just doing PVE damage until we have our next trap, which is here.
Yeah.
So we get that.
I was kind of surprised to see you going like toe to toe like that with the fire mage. Just something I think a lot of people be afraid of doing. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's more of when you're playing hunter and you're fighting a mage, you can kind of know if they have no combustion,
Yeah.
their pressure just does not compare to yours, and it's really difficult. You could pause, go back for a sec too.
Sure.
One thing that you could also keep in mind, pro tip, is when priest casts mind control on your teammates, you could actually dispel the teammate. So my feral gets mind controlled by the priest, so I can actually use my trank shot to dispel him out of the mind control instead of having to use the kick on the mind control.
Yeah, that's something that like I forget about all the time, and I think it's something that everyone else probably forgets about a lot too.
Yeah, super useful though. I'm able to do that. My priest doesn't have to use his dispel, and I just do a quick target on him, purge him.
Never think of that. It's interesting.
Yeah, it could be game changing. It helps out a lot. We're just in this opportunity where I'm just waiting for my next kind of clean go.
Yeah.
But that sort of just depends on me waiting for them to do their setup. After that, I can start going. So once I see my feral has a stun for the mage, that's kind of when I go for my CC, since he's too far away from the healer. And normally you want the feral to double stun, but if he's too far away, you could just use your scatter shot for CC. So that's what I do. And then I try to go for this extra burst attempt. I just try to do that same Kyrian arrow burst, and we get the mage's cauterized.
Super
so
close.
Yeah. I mean, we get everything. He's still scared. We get ice block, so we know that he's a kill target. Even the Holy Priest can be a kill target for me if I get all my bursts lined up, but I just have to not get peeled. So those are two things that I have in mind that either one of them could get killed at this point. Now they go for that same kind of leg sweep go on my healer. They burst him. I just use scatter shot on the monk, peel him, Roar Sacrifice on my healer. He's fine, and now it's back to going offensive for us.
And now you know that the mage just doesn't really have a lot of defensive abilities themselves at this point. Like block is down, like you said, cauterize should be down still, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I spend this entire point where I'm just running at the mage. I'm just doing everything I can to kind of scare them. I'm in their face. I'm getting CC. I'm just kicking the healer unholy. I'm just doing everything I can to be super offensive. Then once I know my burst is lined up, I get ready to just pop it on the mage again. So I just pop everything, burst him, force the priest to use his guardian. They're just constantly getting pressured here, and I just go for these scatters, go for a half trap on it. I'm just trying to keep the chain just constantly going. I just want this mage to be as scared as possible, force him behind, and even start taxing that Holy Priest mana. Like we could see he's at half mana, and he's been getting CC'd almost constantly this game.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a case where you feel like the mage's positioning hasn't been able to be ideal because he's have to keep running basically.
Yeah, exactly. If you keep him on the run, he can't sit there and basically spam Fireball to give himself that cooldown reduction with the Pyrokinesis. So that makes it so that you're always guaranteed to kind of get that cooldown trade with Roar Sacrifice on their combustion.
Yeah, this has just been like a non-stop pressure game the entire time.
Yeah. This is just one of those situations where like if you pause and look at where I am right now,
Hmm.
I'm so far away from them, but I'm just doing free damage. So I'm not a kill target, but like they're just being pressured the entire time, right? So it's all about doing as much damage as safely as you can. Like I'm able to hit the mage here, so I don't have to chase them. Sometimes people
Yeah.
might chase too early, but if I can sit back, be up there, the monk has to move way too far away to stop me from doing anything. And like this is a situation. It's a mage, and I'm a hunter. Like he is my meal. That is exactly who you want to hunt. You want
Yep.
to go after them. You want to chase them down. You know, you, it's almost like I'm looking for an almost inevitable win, and I'm just constantly looking out for when they have kill opportunities. Like if we look right here, you could see that I'm tracking the cooldown of the monk's leg sweep. I know he has it in 25 seconds, so I know that like we're totally fine to stay offensive. I could just keep doing damage. I have my burst cooldowns available, so I'm just waiting for my feral gets a good stun on the priest, and I can follow up. I'm just looking to follow up if I can, and if I can't, maybe we'll force to go with me using the scatter shot. It
Right.
just all about lining it up right. If the mage and priest are close to each other, we could get the double stun. If they're far away from each other, all I need is that one scatter shot as long as we're just doing ideal damage and my feral connects on him and they're scared. So that's just my main focus.
And I mean, this is like pacing wise very different from the last game we watched, where like the last game we watched was like surviving cooldown windows on their side to then finding a chance to 100 to 0 somebody on that on the other side, right? Whereas this game is just constant pressure trying to make them have to consistently use those big defensive cooldowns in sequence so that you'll eventually find a time where they don't have them and then you can just sort of like grind someone down, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a big strength of mage and holy priest together. They have so much healing. They have so many ways to rotate through stuff. So
Right.
you have to be able to force them lower by getting this constant pressure.
Hmm.
So I have to be aggressive. If I just played safe the entire time, like the last game, we're never going to get a kill opportunity. They just have too many things to rotate through. So we need that
Exactly.
constant pressure, and we need to force them defensive.
All right, I'm gonna unpause it now, and we'll see if you can finish them off.
Yeah, I think here I'm also looking for an opportunity to kill their priest because he has no
Mm,
greater fate. So I can
right.
also 100 to 0 him. So here I try to get the setup on him because the mage pre-runs and the monk does a good job and stops me. If he didn't stop me there, I had to lock and load proc, so I could have,
Oh wow, yeah.
I could have bursted him down.
Hmm.
So quick tip, if you have double tap available as a hunter, oh, you could pause it for a sec to talk about that.
Sure.
If you have double tap, available and you have a lock and load proc, it can actually affect the rapid fire and the lock and load proc at the same time as long as you spam it right after. So it gives you
Oh,
extra burst
okay, yeah.
damage. So if you have that situation, that's like the most burst you could do. So you could kill a holy priest 100 to 0 with that, but you do need that to be available. But
Hmm.
since the monk does incap me, I can't get that together. So it has to be like in sequence. It has to be uninterrupted. But
Yeah.
forcing them to stop me, that's still really good because the monk is having to run across the map. It's just a rough game for him because of that.
Like a big part of, I mean, WoW in general, I think is sequencing abilities correctly, right? And but one
Yeah.
thing a lot of people don't think about is that like there's the general sequence in which you do things that is good, but then there's also those extra sequencing things like what you just talked about where those opportunities don't come around regularly, but they come around often
Yeah.
enough that you need to be aware of like how to use them when the opportunity arises, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, when I'm in this situation where I'm just constantly pressuring them, anyways, like I could kind of just be waiting like for that to happen at certain points because I could just be doing DPS and I'd be like, oh, hey, I got a proc. I could just
Yeah.
actually pop my burst here, and that's kind of the thing that I keep in mind versus this because they are squishy enough to get 100 to 0 by me, either the mage or the holy priest.
Hmm.
So both those opportunities are good. I mean, I got the mages cauterized and blocked from one opportunity like that. So if I just see one of them runs away, I try to burst the other one down. Sometimes the monk, he can stop me. Sometimes he can't. And I'm pretty much looking for that one window where the monk can't use his in cap to kind of disrupt me on that burst, and that's when I know we'll be able to win the game.
Right, and that's when positioning comes in so that you can stay away as far as you can from the monk to make it harder for them to put any of that CC on you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So now here that they go for their other kill window. The mage
Hmm.
pops his combustion, but like I said, every single time he pops combustion, I have Word Sacrifice available. So
Right.
I just kind of sit on the priest, harass him, wait for Shadow Word Death, wait for him to use Fade. Now he has no stops for my freezing trap, so I could just run up to the priest and get a full trap on him. I
Hmm.
mean, he's doing everything he can to kind of keep me away. He's using defensive fears, so this is just kind of perfect for us. I mean, if they use all these to stop me from getting on him, it just puts them behind as far as defensive pressure. So I still
Right.
get that inevitable trap.
Well,
If here's me, my priest can fear him.
it's almost kind of nice that you could like bait out that fear on just you too.
Yeah, exactly. Because then that means my priest can just run on top of him, and he
Exactly.
has nothing for it. Because he already used Greater Fate. He used everything he could to avoid it
Mhm.
to stop my trap.
And
But then he still gets spirit trapped.
you had just kind of gone through excuse me, you just kind of gone through one of your cooldown windows too, right? So you knew that if you got feared there, it wasn't the biggest deal. You weren't going to be putting out the most damage anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's really good before you want to burst to
Hmm.
try to get those out the way, because then you could put yourself on diminishing returns. Like you're just pressuring them, and like we could see that the Holy Priest actually has finally started to go
Yeah.
and it's just getting super hard for him to actually heal through our damage. So now I finally have this burst window, and I noticed that the monk wasted his incap, so the mage is dead here. He just gets popped. We
Yeah.
have the
There's a
the
seed.
seed. Yeah, and
Yep.
it's just dead instantly. I mean, we just had so much offensive pressure. We finally them, and we just
Hmm.
ran at him the entire game until we could just get that one clean kill window.
WoW PvP is so interesting because you've got all these little like sub things that matter honestly a lot more than just like the big abilities that people talk about, right? The big
Yeah.
defensives, the big offensives. Like it's the little things like baiting out that fear. I think that makes a difference. But let's jump back to the lobby and talk about it a bit more. Yeah, so it's kind of like what we were talking about at the end of that one, where it's when I look at a match like that, and I'm no expert in WoW PvP. Like let's get that out there. Let's be honest. I'm an enthusiast. I love talking to people that are much better at it than me, like you are. But I'm no expert. But when I watch like AWC and when I watch games like we just saw, it's things to stand out to me. Honestly, are like you getting that fear out of the priest at the very end, right? Because
Yeah.
it's the big cooldowns are important for sure, but it's kind of those like lesser things that can sometimes in the moment make the difference, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's one of the most interesting things about WoW, which
Yeah.
unfortunately can sometimes be missed when you are watching AWC. I
Super
mean,
easy to miss. Yeah.
like the thing is, you'll be able to get the bigger picture, and that's great. And the biggest thing is getting those small technical things. Those are really hard to come by.
Hmm.
Um, even harder to keep track of in AWC because um, in a way, like little smaller plays like that don't necessarily always happen in tournament play because
Hmm.
everyone's playing as safe as possible. So sometimes that's more of like a risk reward thing. Like that's something as hunter that is really important to do, like play really offensive like I am. But sometimes in a tournament play, you're just like, I don't even want to risk being near there. Like, everyone's playing as scared as possible, so they don't even put
Hmm.
themselves in that situation.
Do you feel like that's an opportunity maybe in the WoW competitive scene in that you could have a team that flips that switch and decides, you know what, we're not going to play as safe, we're just going to play mega aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you will see that happen. I think was it? I think the second cup, I believe Method EU. They started playing the Rogue Mage Priest with
Hmm.
Waz playing this sub rogue build where they have one Shadow Dance, and then it's a super offensive all in build.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can throw people off because you might not plan to play against that,
Hmm.
and if they don't play that too much on ladder, for example, you might not have a good idea in your head of how much damage they can do or the right composition to play into it.
Hmm.
So I think you can sometimes use those opportunities and use a really aggressive strategy to win. The only downfall is that usually very hyper aggressive strategies in tournament play can be more prepared for. So
Hmm.
it's something
Right.
that you can catch a team with, maybe once or twice, but eventually they maybe find a different composition that just prevents that type of strategy from happening
Right,
instead.
which is kind of the perennial problem with all-ins in any esport, right? Is that
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you know what is coming. If you can prevent that thing from happening, then usually the team that's doing it doesn't have as much of a fallback plan afterwards because they're not planning to use it, and then also they've kind of like played their hand, right? All the good
yeah.
stuff is gone. So yeah, there's a time and a place. I feel like I see sort of two different styles. If I could equate it to like traditional sports where a lot of times AWC feels like fencing to me, where it's
Mhm.
all different like jabs and defenses and people are playing very cautiously and all that kind of thing. And the other style is like the all in style, it's a sumo style, right? Where you just slam into each other and like after a couple seconds somebody's gonna be on the ground no matter what.
Yeah,
So
that's my favorite style. That's the most
hey,
fun thing to watch in every game.
I play a lot of enhancement shaman, man, so that kind of says it all about my style preference too. But
Yeah, I mean that's the way to go. I
it's
love
fun.
playing aggressively. I love playing all in.
Hmm.
I have grown an appreciation for the calculated play.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
when I was younger though, that was actually a huge issue of mine when I'd play competitively. Like I always wanted to be super offensive, and yeah, that took a
I
lot of
mean, that's
training.
everybody, right? Like, I don't think I started even thinking about playing defensively until I started playing Resto Druid
Yeah.
Lich King arena is when I started being like, wait a second, if I'm playing a healer, first of all, like you can't really go as all in, and then you start to notice like, oh, my teammate was like way too insane there. If you dialed it back, we can do better, and your brain expands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've given my fair share of healer partners heart attacks over the years.
It's the duty of every DPS. We understand.
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are in our first 2v2 game. I think you froze up at the very end. I assume you're ready, so we're just moving into it. So tell me, first of all, how does the mindset for you differ between 2v2 and 3v3?
So in 2v2, I actually spend a lot of the games as um, trying to win eventually. Because
Okay.
especially here, I'm playing with the Holy Priest, so
Yeah.
we could pause to talk about this for just a sec.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, in twos, I discovered Holy Priest is super good with the priest part I'm playing. This guy's probably the best priest in the world. I'm pretty sure people started playing Holy Priest
Shout
because
out
of this guy.
Stylebenders.
Yeah, he is one of the best priests I've ever played with. I played with him for a long time, but he is actually a European player. Made an NA character, and then we started playing again, so it kind of goes back and forth like that. But yeah, I think the strength of Holy Priest is you have these eventual win conditions, and they have a stun for me, which is super super valuable in two. So most of my mindset is just kind of waiting to get that clean opportunity where I can do my damage. Here I picked 2 games of the same matchup.
Okay,
Which
yeah, I
is,
saw that. Which is
yeah,
arguably like people, I mean, I haven't played a ton of 2v2, but whenever I have, Rogue Fire Mage is always like the hardest matchup.
yeah, and the thing is, usually hunters are good against Rogue Fire Mage,
Yeah.
but something that we kind of discovered is it's actually really scary as Holy Priest Hunter because even though we have a lot of things that can shut down their go, like Roar Sacrifice and the Mage Goes, we don't necessarily have things that we could use preemptively. Like with
Mhm.
the Discipline Priest, you have Pain Suppression that you could use if they're gonna get a go off, or they have the Dome of Light. They have better cooldowns to rotate through, and here we only have things that either avoid us from getting CC'd or damage onto us, but nothing that's like just reducing damage. So
Yeah.
this matchup actually gets really scary because if they do connect their damage, it's really easy for you to die here.
Oh, totally.
So
Yeah.
so most of my mindset in this matchup, and plus it's a faster one, is I need to do everything I can to preemptively outplay their goes. We can't play reactively. We have to be like thinking in my head. The rogue wants to set up on me at this time, and that's when the mage has to go. So then we have to do what we can to avoid it from happening instead of like, oh, I'll let this happen and I'll trade a cooldown. We don't have that opportunity here.
I just noticed a totally side thing. I just noticed that you use S as one of your hotkeys. So you never walk backwards. Walking backwards
Yeah.
is not part of your mindset in this game at all, huh?
No, the walking backwards, I have that on my right arrow key. So like if I get a nice
Oh.
kill on like one of my friends and I need to like give them a little like flex, I give the right arrow key. So I take my hands off my mouse for that and I give them a nice little back pedal. But otherwise, yeah, I like the S for disengage. Goes backwards. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Oh man, if I made that swap, I would be jumping off cliffs constantly. Anyway, you ready? Should I hit play? You ready?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
I'm good to go.
All right, that's cool. Cause like you use F as well. Like I've incorporated like Q, E, R, T, but I haven't gone as far as F. I need to redo my
Yeah,
hotkeys, man.
keybinds are something that you really explore a lot.
Yeah, X, W, Z. You use like everything. This is like an old school like Unreal
Wow.
Tournament keyboard setup.
I use N as well for the Hunter's Mark. That one's weird.
Wow. That is a little bit weird, but I like it. I like it.
Yeah, there's a need, I guess. Here our mindset is just I want to kind of sit in stealth until their mage comes out and let
Yeah.
my priest try to preemptively purge him. So he pushes in and he's offensive, and I use this binding shot. You can pause it for a sec.
Sure.
So I use the binding shot on the mage, and I throw the tar trap here. It does break my stealth, but I do this so I keep myself in combat. Rogue can't stab me.
Mm-hmm.
And now since the mage is rooted, he can kind of purge off his shields. So if you look at our positioning, my priest puts Holy Ward on himself
Mm-hmm.
once he's now in combat. So the rogue can't sap it off. He has to use a cheap shot or a kidney shot to remove it, which is really annoying for him. And we're super far away that if the rogue wants to go for CC on him, I could kind of outrange his Shadow Step because the Shadow Step has a 25-yard range. So if you look at this distance between us, it's really big. He could still heal me, but I know when the go is coming, and that's really important for us to kind of preemptively play around it. So we want to give ourselves as much time to react to it happening, and then you can unpause it from here, and we kind of see how I start playing around this.
Okay, that's
So,
interesting. Because like
ma-
oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, so the mage sheeps me, and you could pause again.
Ah, you
Oh,
found
sorry.
him.
Yeah, it's
Nothing
really fast.
feels better than a rogue in a frost trap that you put down right behind yourself.
Yeah,
Honestly,
so this is us reacting really quickly. So what happens is the mage sheeps me.
I'm gonna back this up so people can see it again real quick here. Right.
He sheeps me, and I put this
Yep.
trap on my feet. So I put
Hmm.
the trap behind me. So if the rogue wants to shadow
There.
step, yeah. So the rogue shadow steps, and then he gets trapped. The thing is my priest, he used his fear on the rogue once he came out because he had that holy ward.
Right.
So then the rogue wanted to trinket to get the kidney shot so that he could get the CC. But I put the trap right behind me. So since we have this distance, I know that the only way the rogue can get to me quickly right after he goes for that CC on my priest after breaking his holy ward, he has to go for that shadow step. So since it's
Mm.
on my back, shadow step teleports you to behind the person,
Right.
guarantees I get the trap on him. Now I'm safe here. He has no trinket and he's stuck on this go. Then when the mage tries to go for a polymorph, now I know that I could use the kick on him and I completely shut down this go. And they lose this kill opportunity here entirely. So
And this
you get a
is
pause right here.
this is really like the essence of beating this team, right? Is you have to survive the initial assault, and if you can do that, I feel like it gets a lot easier suddenly.
Right, now that we have this, I can pop my cooldowns on the rogue. He has a stun on him. I put my arrow, and now I just start lining the rogue. They don't have a kill opportunity for us. I'm just doing what I can. He's
Yeah.
getting crushed behind the pillar, and I have Hunter's Mark on the rogue, so he's just getting harassed this entire time. He
Hmm.
tries to go for that Shadow Meld reselt, and I just prevent it. Mage pops Combustion, and if you go back 1 second too, the rogue again tries to get that same Shadow Step play.
Right.
So I react super quickly here. Once we do this burst, I see the mage wants to pop combustion and the rogue wants to get to me.
Hmm.
This is going to be really, really hard to watch. I see the rogue is inching his line of sight. Once he
Yep.
steps and gets to me, I
There it
feign
is.
death for a second. He drops target from me, so then
Yep.
I can freezing trap him. So I react to freezing trap instead of preemptive. So
Wow.
right as he tries to get to me. But I know that he's doing that because he has to use his sprint. He has to run at me. He has no opportunity but to go for the go.
Hmm.
So we want to do everything we can to kind of prevent that. So it's all about knowing that this is their kill opportunity. I prevent that. And then after the rogue shadowy duel expires, we could just go offensive and finally
Yeah.
just get this kill on the rogue.
There's no way he's surviving anything at that point. Yep. So that was a fast
Yeah.
one. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's jump back to the lobby. Ah, yes. I love watching the rogue mage lose. I don't know. It's maybe I don't mean to be mean to rogue mage players out there, but like if you've played 2v2 at all like this season, you know what it's like, right? So it feels a bit good. It's
Yeah.
fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
It's
so
it's it's fun making them frustrated.
So then we've got another. You said the second 2v2 as well is going to be another rogue mage. But before we jump into that, any final thoughts on that one we just watched? Like, what in your opinion is a big takeaway, if there is anything aside from what we talked about in terms of just surviving that initial assault, knowing what tools a rogue has access to, that kind of thing. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, like we already said, the biggest thing
Mhm.
with this matchup is just your positioning between you and a healer. The entire time, if you watch, me and my priest are really spread out from each other. So even if you see plays that look like they're happening really, really quickly, we actually have a lot of time to think about it because of our positioning. So like, I did that feign death trap on the rogue, and that really shut him down when he tried to shadow step.
Right.
But I also know like 3 or 4 seconds ahead of time that that's what he's going to do because I can watch him. He's sprinting towards me, and when it's rogue mage, like they do have this kind of telegraphed window that they need to go on.
Mm.
So by us positioning and I'm out of his line of sight, I know that he has to try to force it in that scenario. So for me, I'm just thinking, okay, well, I know this has to happen, so then I can play around it, and it becomes a lot easier to do outplays like that when you know that that's what's going to happen. It's not like I'm like, oh my god, rogue's on me, and I react to that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have that crazy of a reaction time. I actually just have thought about it like 3 or 4 seconds ahead of time that that's going to happen. But these are the windows you give yourself by having strong positioning versus rogue mage.
Right. And when you get to a certain point too, like those fast reactions are just a result of like not even thinking about it. Your hands just do it because in that
Yeah,
scenario, this is what your hands do, and you almost don't even need to think about doing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It becomes second nature.
Exactly. All right. So ready to get into the last game?
Yeah, I am.
All right. Here we are in what's going to be the last game of the show. Another 2v2, another rogue mage combo. Same priest ally that you had before. I was really curious when the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is when rogue mage comes out and you just don't know where the rogue is. How do you kind of decide on where to position? Is it the same each time roughly? Do you sort of know what rogues tend to do? Like what's your mindset with that?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of have an idea of what they might do if
Sure.
it's like certain people. Like here is the same team as last game,
Mm-hmm.
but like I played against these players for years, so you kind of have an idea of their
Ah, okay.
tendencies.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the big things, even if I didn't know them, I go into camouflage, and I know that lasts longer than the mage's invisibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always just like trying to position to just like kind of move away. And this always gives us the advantage where we know that we can kind of shut down their opener a lot. So here I still stay spread from my priest. I think here I was actually checking to see
Mm-hmm.
who it was because yeah, that just helps me kind
uh,
of have an idea of what to do. So yeah, now we have ourselves in combat, and I do the same thing where I try to go for a binding shot on the mage
mm-hmm.
to let my priest preemptively purge the mage's shields in case I want to kill him. So here I do, and I see the rogue pop out of stealth, so I kind of do the same thing as before. I let them go for the re-stealth, and then once he stuns the rogue, I scatter shot the mage.
Yeah.
Lets my priest kind of set up a bit, but I decided I want to just go for the kill opportunity on the mage here instead. Once they
Okay.
do the sheeps on me, that's when they try to do their setup. So I wait for that, but I had the trap already on my feet, so I've been standing here for a few seconds.
Yeah.
So here it's really scary for the mage. The mage pops that combustion go, and he ring of frost my pet, so I couldn't reward sacrifice it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just do what I can to just run around in line of sight and just stay safe because, like I said before, you don't have that much in the go. You just need to survive once they have that go. So now that we're on DR, I can start being offensive. We start poking the rogue and start hitting him here because the mage gets away. I don't really have a way to keep chasing after him without making myself too far away from my healer.
Yeah.
So I just go back.
Even though the life bars didn't really go down a couple moments ago, that was actually like a really close moment in the game.
Yeah, we're like exchanging a lot here. This, if you pause right here,
Yeah.
is like the best thing that could have happened. As soon as I saw the kidney shot on my priest, I know the rogue is gonna get to me. So I decide here that I don't think I have enough time to try to pre-trap the rogue on the go, but if I go for the scatter shot on the mage, and he's playing that relentless, so he doesn't have a way to break out of the scatter shot, I could pretty much cover that entire window and make it so that the mage can't get any follow-up CC. And since I was so far away from my priest, because he's on the other pillar, I know that the rogue is not going to be able to just go for the sap off of the kidney, so it has to be the mage exclusively.
Mm.
So here, I just use the scatter shot on the mage, stop his damage. I get really low from just the rogue, but my priest is able to just save me out of this. He uses guardian on me. He has heals. I'm fine.
Right, because your priest isn't really being pressured much at all at this particular moment.
Right. Like if he got full polymorphed, we would have been in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah.
So all I know is if I just scatter shot the mage, I at least stopped him from following up, and just the rogue alone, it's not enough. They can't get the CC without that CC chain. I'm fine.
Okay. We'll unpause it to watch you
Yep.
be fine.
Yeah.
About to talk to your steward there.
Yeah, here the rogue uses shadowy duel on me. He uses a lot. He trinkets my trap. So I just use minor cooldowns. I use my heal with Guardian, gets a little bit of a bonus. But since they get this extended CC chain, you can see they actually end up forcing so many cooldowns. I have to use my aspect of the turtle, and my priest has to use trinket. So if they ever do connect that CC, it's super scary. They could force everything from me. But I know that I still have to keep up our pressure here. I can't just kind of let this game stay safe. I put the trap on my feet for myself so that I could do this go, and the rogue can't get right back to me. So I'm just trying to move around, dance around this trap, making it so the rogue can't step back to me. So I just try to keep playing it safe, keep this distance from him while the mage is in the ice block, and then he tries to shadow step. I move my back into the trap, so now the rogue's trapped again, and I put him in the flare, do what I can to keep him in combat so he doesn't get these resells. I'm just doing what I can to harass the mage, or pressure him as much as possible. But right off this go, I know that even though the mage doesn't pop combustions, the rogue has shadow blades, and I need to just be super careful to not die here since I have nothing.
Yeah.
So I use Aurora Sacrifice, and I'm really scared because the mage has combustion. So I do what I can to just try to stay alive and try to hopefully win on the next go. But this game, it's not as clean as the last one. I'm super scared that we could lose in the next go. I have absolutely nothing. The mage could pop combustion, and I could go down. So I need to do everything I can to peel them off of me. If you notice, my pet was in a root. Yeah. So here the mage pops combust, and I just run away out of line of sight. I use my feign death, and then I scatter shot him. So here I'm like doing everything I can out of desperation to just barely survive without that Aurora Sacrifice. And that's like what you have to do. You have to just know that they're going to go for that. I was already ready to get behind the pillar. Then I finally go offensive again, and am able to get the kill on the mage.
Seed, yeah. Okay, so at the end of that, it was really again like the Kyrian ability, which for some reason I can never remember the name of. What's the name of that Kyrian Hunter ability again? I play Hunter and I can't remember this.
Resonating arrow.
Resonating Arrow. That's right. Okay, so because of that, a lot of times you put these, you can put players in sort of untenable positions, right? Where suddenly the big sort of damage avoidance tool that everyone has access to in Arena, which is line of sight, is no longer there. And so I feel like in a lot of cases, especially maybe in 2v2s, is that once some of the cooldowns are gone, then it's just like, well, I'm going to take away the only other defensive thing you have, and that's that, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Usually the way that you can stop that ability, it's instead of line of sighting, the best thing to usually do to hunters is to run at them and try to like CC them and stop them. So
Uh-huh.
it's actually to play offensively. But when you're fighting comps like Rogue Mage, the thing is that they have to use their CCDRs to get their kill window.
Yeah.
So once they've already gone for that, that's when I always pop my damage once I know that I'm safe, because then I know they have nothing to use to kind of avoid my damage.
Mm-hmm.
And they also might be still really close to us that my healer can kind of go onto him, and I think that's where the synergy of the Holy Priest is there, because they have that stun. So versus classes like Arms Warriors that can pretty much always stop me on my burst if they use a disarm,
Right.
he has the stun to kind of line up with me, so he kind of prevents me from actually getting shut down on my burst. So that's why I think the synergy is really strong with those. You utilize the potency of the Kyrian arrow, and you're able to cover the weakness of you being CC'd or stopped on that burst window.
Okay. So I wanted to ask a little bit too, as we sort of go into the post show, almost so to speak here. I wanted to ask sort of your feelings on a different hunter specs, right? Because obviously Marksman is a big spec right now in Shadowlands. It was Beast Mastery back in BFA for a certain extent. We know that survival exists. That's about it.
Yeah.
But so as far as the different specs go, do you ever find yourself swapping away from what is considered to be generally the strongest spec in PvP, or is it always just whatever happens to be, you know, the best, quote unquote, at the moment? Do you ever like to play off meta as far as hunter specs go?
Yeah, actually now with 9.05, I would
Mhm.
say that Marksman is more off meta with Kyrian. The new meta is actually playing BM with Venthyr. It has
Okay.
really high sustain damage, and it kind of plays out similar to the Venthyr Arms Warriors, where you're just constantly just smacking people the entire game with executes. It's a really strong spec. For me, I think my general priority is when I'm playing ladder, since usually hunters are always like in their own wacky place already. It's not like they're always the most meta. They always, have their
Mhm.
niche. I generally tend to favor what's more fun for me versus what's like the strongest. Like I still think that playing Kyrian MM is really fun
Yeah.
because there's so much more I could do in the game. But when I am playing in tournaments, obviously the preference is to just play whatever is good. I don't find BM Venthyr to be that interesting for me
Hmm.
in this current point in time. So yeah, I just don't play it. But it is definitely a really good option. I would recommend it a lot. It's really, really solid right now. It's uh, it's good for like all skill levels of players. So I think that's something that I would definitely recommend. I might not
Okay.
be playing it because yeah, it's just not as fun for me, and I know I would probably still have like similar success without playing
Well,
it. So
I mean, the thing that people need to realize is that like 99.9% repeating of players out there are not going to be pro players, right? And so
yeah,
for like not everyone who's watching this right now, you know, myself included, who's making this, is never going to be a pro WoW player, right? But that doesn't mean so we're playing it for fun, right? And so at
yeah,
the end of the day, I think a lot of players, because of social media and because of the internet, feel like they should be playing whatever is numerically stated to be the best in any given class,
yeah.
and that's just not it's not just PvP. That's also rating. That's Mythic Plus, right? But you can
Mhm.
find a high level of success with basically any spec if you're good enough. You know, if you
Yeah.
practice it enough. And so I always have said over the years, like, just play what you enjoy, right? Because if you don't need to be a pro player, if you don't need to be the top 0.001% of players, you can still find the kind of soft cap of success for the casual, right? Which is still enough to get all the rewards in the game and all that kind of stuff. Just play what you want, you know?
Yeah. Also, I actually think that playing what you want is actually good advice for anyone that wants to be good too. Because the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, if you want to be good at any game or any activity, you have to put in a very large amount of time,
Oh yeah.
and you have to enjoy what you're playing so that yeah, you don't get burnt out. Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
I like playing Hunter, so I can put in the time playing Hunter, and I could do what I can to perfect like the play on it because I'm having fun with it.
Mm,
But there could be something that I just don't like, and I'm not going to enjoy putting in the effort as much. So it is not, it's not reasonable to kind of get that experience. Like for you to get good at anything, you have to fundamentally enjoy what you're doing. And
right.
you know, I've noticed a lot of people when they force themselves to play something that just because it's good, they end up not liking the game as much because they're like, oh, this isn't as boring, and then they just
Mm-hmm.
get demotivated.
Kind of
And
becomes work at that point. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the end goal of a game should be to have fun in my
Mm-hmm.
eyes, or anything. Um, yeah, that's why it's called a game, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, like if your job isn't to make money by winning in this game, then you don't need to really min max it, you know? Then it doesn't
Yeah,
need to be a
exactly.
job. Don't make it a job. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I won't play BM Hunter unless I'm playing in a tournament, because
There you go.
then I yeah I
Yeah.
don't find it fun. I've never found it fun except for maybe a few exceptions. But yeah,
Mm,
don't force yourself to do something you don't like.
exactly. All right. So, last segment that we'll have, and I kind of try to do this now, is have sort of just general tips sort of thing where uh excuse me, my wife's cooking something that smells delicious, but it's very spicy, and so it's like making me
Yeah.
like cough and stuff. But anyway, I digress. So just general hunter tips. If someone is out there and they want to start playing hunter in 2v2s and 3v3s, just playing in arena, playing in BGs, what are the kind of the big things? And we'll go with marksman in this particular case because that's what we were looking at. What are the big things you kind of need to keep in mind, both in terms of talents you want to think about, but also just stylistically play style? What are the kind of main pillars of that, in your opinion?
Um, I think marksmanship hunter has like a balanced playstyle. Sometimes you want to be offensive and sometimes you want to be defensive.
Hmm.
These moments come from experience. In general, one thing that I see players make this mistake of all the time is uh, they have an offensive opportunity, they have their CC, and they have their damage available,
Hmm.
and they're like, okay, now I could go offensive, especially with a class that has like that instant pressure,
Yeah.
like a hunter. Um, Even mages make this mistake though. Sometimes they're like, well, I could polymorph, so I should polymorph right now, but
Hmm.
just because you have it doesn't mean you should go for that window. So I think knowing when you do these things is something you'll just get from playing with time. Um, in general, it's just important to probably learn how other classes can deal damage against you, and know how you could kind of avoid that. I think that's like a really important thing as playing hunter, is just knowing other classes kill windows and how you can stop them.
Hmm. And that's kind of a broad just advice for PvP in general. It's just kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Hunter, I think it tends to be more, not even just their burst, but more of their mobility, because you kind of want to kite damage. Anytime someone connects to you, it's scary, regardless of cooldowns. So
Yeah.
Hunter is less on the trading cooldowns and more on the, I need to avoid damage, I need to run out. That's what you have to be comfortable with.
All right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, you have the mobility or range class. You got to know when to run away, right? That's when you're doing
Yep,
the most damage. Yep.
exactly.
Unless survival. Again, we acknowledge that survival exists. But that's
I like survival.
you know,
Survival actually is the
I
same thing.
oh my gosh, it's so spicy. I played I actually played a bit of survival at the end of BFA, and I really enjoyed it. It's fun. You just leap around and throw bombs at people. Like it's a
Yeah,
fun class, but it is what
yeah,
it is. Yeah.
yeah. Survival is one of my favorite specs. I think maybe event their survival
Again,
is good.
hey, if you like survival, play survival. We talked about this already.
Yeah,
Perfectly fine. I've mentioned before I played enhancement shaman for a lot of years. I've enjoyed it. I haven't become a top player, but that's okay. I don't need to be. I've had fun, which is the important thing. So
yeah, exactly.
this brings us to the end of the show. Um, any final shout outs you want to make or anything like that before we let you go?
Um, Final shout outs. Everyone who has supported me in my streaming, or I guess process, because yeah, I'm definitely not doing much of that anymore. Real life is a little more important. But
It happens.
I've had a very interesting journey, so I want to support everyone who has followed me for all these years, and hopefully this is able to help people that want to play Hunter.
Sweet. I think it is. I think there was great information. I know I learned a lot. I've been playing a little bit of Hunter as well. So I'm going to take this to the arena, and then I'm going to blame you when I lose ranking. That's the plan.
Absolutely.
Yep. I'm
Yeah,
like,
perfect.
Dilly!
That's
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a ton of fun to watch. Thanks everybody out there for watching as well. Like, follow, sub. You can find Dilly. You can see his Twitter right there. I put it in the overlay underneath his name, and then also your Twitch is twitch.tv/.
Dilly underscore WoW. It's the same as my Twitter.
Oh, okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
Very convenient.
Sometimes it's different, you know. All right. So
Yeah.
check him out on Twitch as well. That's going to be it for Galaxy Brain. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.